I get it, you're standing in the dock, staring at the list of windlasses, and every line looks like a gamble. You don't want to spend a few $100 on a piece of gear that ends up gathering rust in the locker, and you certainly don't want to be stuck hauling anchor by hand, because the motor you chose can't keep up with the conditions you actually face. That hesitation is real, especially when you're trying to balance reliability, ease of installation, and the cost of a system that will actually serve the size of boat you have. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The Lewmar Pro Fish 700 is positioned as a plug-and-play solution for boats up to about 38 feet, handling a quarter-inch G4 chain with a maximum pull of 700 pounds. At first glance, that sounds like a sweet spot for a lot of coastal cruisers, charter operators, and even weekend sailors who don't regularly drop a massive 12-pound anchor. The real question is whether the numbers translate into a smooth, trustworthy experience when you actually need to set or retrieve that anchor in a gusty bay or a light offshore breeze. Let's start with the basics that matter once you're on the water. Lewmar's reputation in marine hardware is solid. Most boaters I talk to recognize the name as a benchmark for durability. This model is built from 316 stainless steel, the marine-grade alloy that resists pitting even when you're regularly splashing through salt water. That alone eliminates a common headache: having to replace a corroded windlass after just a season or two. The motor is described as powerful, and while the spec sheet doesn't list exact RPMs, the 700-pound pull rating tells you it can handle a respectable range of anchor weights without stalling. In practice, that means if you're running a 6 to 8-pound anchor on a 30-foot cruiser, you should see the chain lift cleanly, with the motor maintaining steady speed. One of the most talked about features is the auto freefall system. In a manual windlass, you have to crank the handle until the chain is fully released, which can be tedious if the wind is picking up. The auto freefall on the Pro Fish lets the chain drop under its own weight once you engage the release, cutting down on the time you spend wrestling with the anchor in a tight spot. For most users, that convenience translates directly into safety. You spend less time on deck in rough conditions, and you avoid the fatigue that can lead to mistakes. However, there's a trade-off. Because the system relies on gravity, you lose a bit of fine-tuned control over how quickly the chain pays out. In a very soft bottom where you want the anchor to set gently, you might find the freefall a little abrupt. It's not a deal-breaker, but it's worth knowing before you buy. Installation is another area where Lewmar tries to earn points. The kit includes the windlass, a 3-piece mounting bracket, and all the hardware you need to bolt it to a transom or a reinforced deck area. The company markets it as quick and easy, and the feedback from boat owners who have taken the plunge aligns with that claim. You'll still need a basic set of tools: drill, wrenches, a screwdriver, and some familiarity with your boat's existing anchoring setup. But most people without professional help can get the unit mounted in an afternoon. If you're comfortable running a short length of wiring and have a 12-volt power source within reach, you'll avoid the need to hire a marine electrician. That DIY friendliness is a real value add, especially for owners who enjoy doing their own upgrades. Now, who should consider the Pro Fish 700? If you own a boat in the 25 to 38-foot range, typically use a medium-size anchor, and prefer a system that you can install yourself without a massive budget, this windlass checks the boxes. It shines for coastal sailors who anchor frequently in marinas, small bays, or protected inlets where a 700-pound pull is more than sufficient. Charter businesses that rotate the same fleet through similar conditions also benefit. One unit can be swapped between vessels without major rework, thanks to the straightforward mounting system. On the flip side, you might want to skip this model if your sailing profile leans heavy on offshore passages with heavier anchors, or if you run a larger vessel close to the 38-foot ceiling. The 700-pound maximum pull becomes a limiting factor when you're pulling a 12-pound anchor in a soft mud or sand that demands extra force to set. In those cases, you'd be looking at a windlass rated for at least 1,000 pounds, which often means a larger motor, a more robust gearbox, and a higher price tag. Also, if you have a boat with limited transom space, the horizontal layout of this windlass may conflict with other deck hardware, requiring you to rearrange fittings or even consider a vertical unit instead. A practical strength of the Pro Fish is its low maintenance profile. 316 stainless steel doesn't need the regular polishing that lower-grade alloys demand, and the motor is sealed against water ingress.